Thank you. So yes, my name is Mike Hansford. I'm the new CEO of the Road Surface Treatment Association. I'd like to take a little bit more time to introduce the association because you assume that everybody knows what we do and who we are. But it was quite apparent from some conversations since I've been in Blackpool that, especially in local authorities, that's not the case. And these are often the people we're trying to reach out to. So the RSTA is a trade organisation within the highway sector. We're a very small organisation consisting of 5 people, and we employ consultants to help with specialist projects. We have over 90 members, which are made up of contractors and suppliers, local authorities, and asset management, digital systems type companies. So we're a not-for-profit private company. So we're acting in the interests of the highway industry. And we do that through collaboration. So again, collaboration, really key theme. We collaborate with our members. We collaborate with other trade bodies, institutes, with ADEPT, with the Department for Transport, even down to like the RAC to spread like key messages. And of course, LPRIG. So very close partners of LPRIG. We provide technical advice, guidance and support to our member organisations. But really, the purpose of the RSTA is really to promote surface treatments and get some really key messages out there and information. And I feel that this is, an area that I really want to improve coming in as CEO, is to really engage with local authorities in particular, either individually or through regional groups. And I've already had some good conversations this morning about that. Because there's some really good work going on in local authorities who are really embracing these surface treatments. And there's a lot of case studies being built, a lot of information that we can pull together and share that with other local authorities so they can start making more informed decisions. So the other purpose, we've produced technical guidance notes, which are available on our website to download. These refer to all of the different surface treatments. So if you wanted some more information, that's available. We offer CPD accredited training, typically in surface dressing and micro asphalt. We also work with ACPTS on asset management and managing skid resistance. And there's a lot of new faces, especially in local authorities. So it's really important that we make sure that they're trained sufficiently to make these key decisions. I heard of one authority that had their countryside team who were given roads, and you feel like, wow, what are they going to know about road maintenance, So it's really important for me to make sure that they're sufficiently trained to make those sort of key decisions. We offer technical training days in skid resistance and decarbonisation. The next one is coming up in Stafford next month. So they're free to local authorities. So come and get involved in those. We have an MVQ assessment centre. We offer consultancy. We represent sector schemes 13 and 23, if you're familiar with the sector schemes. So last year, the RSTA produced a guidance document for carbon. And this was a document that's available on our website to download for free. It was produced by Pine Management on behalf of the RSTA. So what this enabled you to do was look at all the different treatments that are available, and you can compare those to conventional asphalt, and whether that's in surfacing or patching. So what we're looking at now, that Emma's actually working on, is that second edition that looks at that longer term comparison at typically like a 60 to 90 year life cycle, because that's when you really sort of demonstrate the value of these early life preventative treatments. I won't go into, David's covered everything about why we're doing what we're doing. The experts warned it was going to happen, and it's happening. And I was going to skip that one. As an industry, we recognise that we're really, a carbon-hungry industry. We generate a lot of carbon. So for me, we're never going to get away from using asphalt. We have to recognise that. But I think the key is getting that balance of early life treatments with end-of-life asphalt replacement. Because assets that you buy at home, you buy a car, you don't wait until it blows up. You periodically do your servicing and everything you need to do to maintain that asset. And that's no different for the road network. And every highway authority, I think, has declared themselves band 3. So you've done your, life cycle projections, so you would know whether you've done a really sort of crude analysis of life cycle planning, which I'll go through in a minute, or a really detailed one using actual data, which we talked about earlier this week, actually. you will know that implementing and adopting a preventative maintenance strategy is really key to getting the best value and reducing carbon. So we recognise that, and yet in the 10-year period to 2022, surface dressing was down 44%. And I was quite alarmed just having a look into the DFT work done returns for 2023. There were 62 authorities that declared zero return for surface treatments, and that was any of surface dressing, microasphalt, preservation or rejuvenation. So that's almost over a third of the authorities in the UK. And I don't think that's any coincidence. The pothole numbers are increasing. The Asphalt Industry Alliance reported that last year. But I think, conversations I've had already, I think we recognise that things aren't working. Our networks, whatever we're doing, it's not working. So we really do need to address this. And especially when you look at the cost of potholes, that reactive cycle, and you start looking at the associated carbon associated with those repairs as well. It's kind of worrying. So this was just before I left my previous authority to take up my new role. One of my colleagues said, we just want to continue laying asphalt because that's what they've always done. And I think this is becoming a barrier to authorities making those really bold changes and looking at alternative treatments, methods and materials. And my answer then, as it is now, is that you really can't afford to, because if your maintenance strategy is just about replacing asphalt, you're treating such a small proportion of your network that everything else around it is continuing to deteriorate, you're not treating it, and you're going to end up with lots of potholes. And I can say this from experience, because in Dorset quite a few years ago, we stopped surface dressing, we put all our investment into our strategic network replacing asphalt. A few years later, we had to invest a significant sum of money to recover that position because we couldn't afford to fix all the potholes, basically. So I know from experience that doesn't work. And equally, how are you going to reach your carbon reduction targets? How are you going to get to net zero? So for me, this is a really critical point. So the work of the RSTA, what we do, we're trying to launch some national campaigns and get some messages out there. So last month we launched the National Pothole Prevention Week. We developed a website, which you can see there, and that's got lots of information about all the different surface treatments. We're still sort of building it. It's kind of work in progress, so it'll be an ongoing source of information, and we're uploading case studies to that site. And I think the intention was really to raise awareness of what these possible solutions are to prevent potholes and manage road condition. I think to inform decision makers of what these solutions might be and about developing a preventative maintenance strategy. For me as the incoming CEO, I really want to educate and inform, and I really want to address some of the misconceptions or misunderstandings there are about surface treatments, because some of the things I hear, I don't feel that they're educated comments. They're kind of someone's gut feeling, or someone said that was rubbish, or it doesn't work, And I think there's enough evidence out there from authorities that have really embraced this, and I would say, myself included, back when I was in Dorset, I can say there is the evidence there, and we'll look at those in a minute. And equally, again, to kind of address this issue that these also, whilst they're great value for money, they also help you, reduce your carbon. So surface dressing, we know, really good way of sealing the road, prolonging the road life. The encapsulation system has probably been the biggest development for me, because all the things about surface dressing that people don't like, it addresses those. It looks like a conventional asphalt once you've applied that to the dressing. It locks down the chip-ins. You don't get all the loose chip-ins. It prevents the stripping, the bleeding through in the hot conditions. And we're now using this on roads that we typically wouldn't use them, like urban unclassified roads. And I think certainly when I left, there was not the volume of complaints this year, having treated pretty much all of our dressing sites with this encapsulation. So when you start looking into that longer term life cycle, and we're looking at 60 to 90 years, depending on how heavily trafficked, if your strategy is asphalt replacement, you're potentially looking at about £116 a square metre. If you change that to surface dressing and to do those timely interventions, you're talking about £39 a square metre. So it's quite a difference. And John Lamb, 10 years for a surface dressing. I think if you're using encapsulation, you're going to have a good chance. I'm hearing that designers are starting to go back from racked in, going to like a 10mm single dressing with encapsulation, such as the confidence in this treatment. So I would say, and this is what I'm about, it's like we've done it and there's really good evidence there. So is everybody else, are other authorities aware of this, this change? So if you're not convinced by the costs, let's look at carbon. So your asphalt replacement strategy, 39 kilograms of carbon, and you're reducing that to a quarter by having these timely intervention. That's just surface dressing, and there's other treatments that are lower than that. And one of those is preservation and rejuvenation, and this is an area that I hear a lot around it. Snake oil, where's the evidence that this works? Well, there are authorities that have been using this for quite some time now. Norfolk, I think, been using it for like nearly 20 years. And you've got roads that you can visually see the difference in areas they've treated and not treated. Surrey have actually done some testing, which they shared some results with me. There's evidence there that it's made a real difference. And talking to Ken, they commented that there was real visual difference in the roads that had been treated compared to untreated sections, and there was less stone loss and fretting. So there's evidence that this works. Equally, experiences in like microasphalt, you look at that picture there and you think that's absolutely sound base there with a very thin surface. It's just stripping out. Why would you plane out 30, 40 mil and inlay a new surface course? That's absolutely prime for a microasphalt treatment. And we did that whole estate to really good effect. But equally, we did have conversations about high-speed roads and the use of microasphalts. There are approved products that you can use on high-speed roads. We had this conversation in my own authority where we were saying, is this suitable? Have we got examples of authorities that are doing this? And it's quite apparent that there isn't really a lot of evidence out there. So this is what I want to promote really through the RSTA, is develop these case studies, engage with the authorities that are doing it, and share with those authorities that are not, or maybe not even aware of it, or they're maybe on the fence and want to see a bit more evidence before they commit to it. So that's where I'm coming from. We look at in-situ recycling. So we've got a lot of roads, no construction, lots of potholes. Are you going to patch that? It's going to cost you a lot of money. Your first gut reaction is you need to resurface it. But actually, why not use that existing asphalt, existing granular material, and pulverize it, add a binder. You've then got a bound, solid layer, base layer that you can put your new surface on. And that might be a double dressing on a minor road. You might even think about doing an asphalt surface or binder surface on a sort of high use road. But there's definitely sort of just thinking differently. And that's what we're trying to encourage and say there are options. We don't always have to go for the asphalt replacement. And obviously financial and carbon saving associated with both of those. Again, skid resistance, if you've got problems with that, why resurface it when you can retexture it? And, a lot less carbon, a lot less cost, a lot less impact on the network as well, of course. You obviously have to understand some of the limitations of this treatment, but it's a really viable treatment. And having done some of the testing on that, I can absolutely verify the results are really good. I think geosynthetics are an area where I don't think there's enough knowledge in the industry. And I want to work with our association members, because they're the experts on all this, and say, what are these systems that you've got? Where would they be used appropriately? Let's see some case studies. We can then start sharing that with design engineers, and they can start sort of thinking about how they might use that in road construction, potentially to reduce the depth of construction that they're using, and obviously the associated asphalt. So that's something that I really want to do going forward. And, we're doing these big campaigns on all the major sort of surface treatments, but some of these smaller areas as well, I really want to get into more like lunch and learn type things, putting information on our website, and just sharing that information. So that's what I'm all about. And same goes for patching. We're always going to have to use asphalt in patching, no doubt. There's some cases, certainly when you get into more shallow defects up to like 40, maybe 50 mil, there's always the option of thermal patching, spray injection patching. There's other hot and cold applied sort of screed type materials now in the market. And you always get that initial resistance to everything. But from experience in Dorset, I've just heard that the one thing that was very, resistant to, they're now embracing and saying, this is great, we can use this. So give it a go, because you're going to save a bit of money and you're certainly going to save some carbon. So please get in touch with me if you want to learn any more about any of this. I'm certainly going to be trying to get in touch with you and look at how we can collaborate, how we can share information, and hopefully develop a slightly different approach to maintaining and managing our road networks. Thank you.